Hello, friends. It's Facebook time once more, and this time we are back with you with a very, very interesting topic. It possibly affects all of us, if not most of us. Life gives us a lot of crossroads. What to choose? Do we go left? Do we go right? Do we do medicine? Do we do engineering? That was one of the biggest crossroads that I had to choose. And of course, since I'm sitting in front of you, I did choose medicine. Absolutely no regrets about it. Yeah, but that was a very, very tough time for me because I was good at maths, and leaving something which I was good at was not very easy for me. Similarly, in most of us who wish to conceive, we do reach a crossroads, especially for the girls, for the ladies, for our patients. Whether do we choose fertility or do we choose our career options? So, is there a way that we allow the career to progress without fertility being impeded or being affected? Is there an option like that? So, today I talk about this very interesting sort of a dilemma that most of us go through in our lives, and especially the ladies, because men at times are so much more relaxed when it comes to choosing career over fertility. But for ladies, it is a fixed amount of time that they have to actually dedicate for the child to grow them within themselves so that they deliver. And it's such a precious decision. It's such a very, very important decision in their lives. And let's talk about it. Let's try to see as to why these two things are so important in our lives and how can we go about it by not compromising either of them. If you look at life from a broader perspective, the first 18, 19 years are the best years of our life when we are into schooling. You just enjoy the entire flow. You just try to do what the teachers tell you to do. You just do what your parents tell you to do. And once that is over and you start entering your professional life, that is the professional studies life, that let's say it would be somewhere between 18 and 25. So between 18 and 25 is your beginning or your germination of your professional life. After this, if you notice the entire subsection of the Indian population, if you divide the education into professional and non-professional education, most of the non-professional education, I won't really call it non-professional because today everything is so professional. The people who actually do BCom, BSc and all, the ladies generally tend to get married around 21, 22, 23 years of age. But if someone's taken something like a medicine or engineering or something of that sort, wherein the basic degree takes a little longer than what it would do for a BSc or BCom, the marriage is slightly deferred to somewhere around 25, 26, 27. And this deferment keeps on happening in all the aspects of life. A delay which has started now will continue for another 3, 4 years, and it might continue later in life too. Now, why does this happen? Even if you see from 25 to 35 years of life is the best time for you to rise in profession. But somehow, it is also the best time in your life to reproduce. So these two graphs are surprisingly coincident over each other. They actually mimic each other. And that is the reason why it is so difficult to choose one over the other. What happens after 35? Let's have a look as far as the health aspects are concerned. We all know after 35 the health declines. Ask me about it. I'm on the wrong side of 35, obviously. The quality of the gametes, the eggs that we retrieve from the lady, the sperms that we retrieve from a male, are all going to go slowly but surely towards the declining side. The quality definitely goes down, the quantity definitely goes down. Why this happens? Possibly the long exposure that you've had or the gametes have been having to the environmental toxins, radiations, etc., drugs, whatever it could be, X-rays, cell phones, it could be anything. But the best gametes are reserved for the time between 25 and 35. Also, what is important is the chromosomal anomalies which happen in people, especially ladies who conceive after 35, is also very high. The smaller problems like headaches, backaches, all these niggles that one faces, these small problems after 35 tend to become bigger problems. Also, 35 is the harbinger of lifestyle diseases. You get diagnosed with diabetes, hypertension, even obesity, of course, has a higher preponderance over 35 years of age. Now, if you look at a career of a cricketer, you see anyone, pick up anyone, be it Virat Kohli, be it Dhoni, or be it anyone, all of them are great. But you would see that they have achieved this greatness between this age group of 25 and 35. Most of the sporting world records are held by people who are between 25 and 35 years of age. If it is beyond this, then it's news. That's why if a teenager makes a world record, it is news. Because generally the maturity, the peak of physical fitness, everything happens between this age. It gives the right output to the body. It gives the best quality to the body. And it also gives the best gametes to the body. So this age of 25 to 35, where both these things coincide, career as well as the reproductive potential, is a big dilemma that most of us would face in life. Is there a way to overcome this? Well, I'll try to talk about the different options that are available. You're already, let's say, 27, 28. Let's take a break. Let's have a child. Easier said than done. Why? Life isn't a timetable. What if you can't reproduce between that break that you've taken? It only increases the stress level. And then you're again at a dilemma. Should I continue with my career? Or should I compensate a little more and try again? It only increases the stress in the couple. And this stress keeps on compounding as time goes by. And if you are blessed with success, congrats to you. But if you aren't, well, things go downhill from here. The other option is possibly, let's complete the family and then let's do our career options after that. Well, it's a race. Unfortunately, it's a rat race. And you take a break from it, it definitely has impact on your career options. You will never get, or you will never be able to demand the same compensation from your company if you come after 2 or 3 or 4 years after you have done your degree. All these things take a beating on your career. So there are a lot of people who do complete the family between the 2 degrees. Let's say between your undergraduate degree or a graduate degree and your postgraduate degree, or your postgraduate and your super specialization degree. But all these things do have a side effect. You might not be able to put your career back on the track. It definitely has a setback on this. So, is there a mid path? That is what I'm going to address today. Of course, there's a mid path. The most easiest way is, as soon as you get married or you're about to get married or you're even planning fertility or something of that sort, get yourself assessed. This assessment is individualized for both males and females. Males, it's slightly easier in terms of a semen analysis which needs to be done. If there is an issue, then it can be addressed immediately. Females, it's easier if you actually add on the hormonal assay and get an ultrasound done for your antral follicle count. Add on the lifestyle factors like smoking, alcohol, stress levels, sleep patterns, and you can actually predict what is your fertility potential in a female, or even for that matter, a male. If your fertility potential is good, then possibly you could defer your family. But deferment means you will have to keep reassessing yourself, because sometimes when the drop in fertility happens, it at times is precipitous. And when this fall happens, you might not be able to recover from it. If you are at a risk, then choose the option of completing your family first. And for this, you can actually time your family completion with help of specialists like us who practice infertility. How do you do that? Today, the entire aspect of infertility has become so easy. or rather IVF has become so easy because the protocols are so standardized. You standardize the protocol, you choose your time as to when you have to do your ovum pickup, and you freeze your eggs, or you freeze your sperms, or you freeze your gametes. You can transfer them at a later date. So you can almost be sure that within the break that you have taken, you will be pregnant. It is such a relief at that point of time. Of course, this is for those who are at risk of losing fertility in the near future. Also, what is very important is the process of cryopreservation has become so good today. Cryopreservation can be done for everything today, which is related to reproductive gametes, or which are reproductive potential. We can freeze sperms, we can freeze eggs, we can freeze the embryos on this first day, second day, third day, fifth day. Everything has been standardized. The process of vitrification or fast cooling today is so good that there are hospitals which almost guarantee almost 100% cryo survival. Whether they implant is a different issue, but yeah, cryo survivability is almost as good as 100%. Then you have also institutes which have come up which would give IVF at home, which is a great concept. What they do is you only have to visit the clinic for an ultrasound. The injections and the blood tests are done at home itself. So you don't really have to compromise the care, your office going or your career options just to get pregnant or just to make your embryo. It has made life so much more easier. It's a wonderful concept, and I think it's going to gain popularity in the near future. Also, what it helps us do, if you conserve your ovaries or preserve your gametes or embryos, is you're absolutely sure of your end product. You know that the bank is having your embryo, your egg. And when it's used, you are nearly guaranteed of at least a 70 to 80, depending. There are so many more factors which come into play. But yes, a definitely higher percentage than a natural conception. The process of vitrification, the freezing process, is fabulous today. All the protocols are standardized, be it stimulation, be it freezing, be it thawing. Everything is so much more standardized today as it was possibly even as less as 10 years ago. It was anyone's game. Also, what you're ensured or assured of is the gametes that you're using is of a younger age because it's of some time before. And the beauty of the entire thing is the success rate is not dependent on the uterine age. It is dependent mainly on the age of the gamete. So a gamete or a sperm and egg which is taken at the age of, let's say, 25 has a better chance of success than a gamete taken at the age of 35, even if the transfer is done to a uterus which is around 40 years of age. So gametes being of a younger age is a big advantage in the success rates. This is very important, and this is the message that really needs to go across. Number one, assess yourself. I would say assess yourself even before you actually enter the contract of marriage. Assess yourself when you're planning a family. Assess yourself immediately after marriage. Let's see, should we have the child early? Should we have the child late? If your career is taking off, you can't take a break to have a child. Do take a break to have your IVF done. Cryopreserve your embryos and make sure that you have a relatively stress-free life after that, because you know your embryos are safe, and when the time is optimal, when your project is done, when your career has stabilized, take a break, become a mother, become a parent, and take your life ahead in a much, much planned, elective, and a very less stressful way of enjoying parenthood. Thank you for your time and attention. I would now take questions, and with my help here, I think he's getting on the question. Okay, the first question is from Mr. Abid Javed. How do you ensure that the embryos are not mixed up in cryostorage? Excellent question. I think there are movies made about this, and I'm not going to take the name of movies, but yes, Nowadays, we are so very careful about this entire issue that we have something called as electronic witnessing system. Everything is tagged. The tagging can be by barcodes, it can also be by RFID, and there are so many more ways of tagging a thing so that it is absolutely sure that the correct embryo is being pulled out. If you pull out the wrong embryo, the entire lab goes into shutdown. That is the beauty of the electronic witnessing system. If you take a step back in time, even before the electronic witnessing system actually came into being, we used to follow something called as a double witnessing. That is, every gamete, every straw, every specimen that we pick up is double witnessed. If, for example, I pick up the gamete of Mr. ABC, I have to spell it out loud. Someone else hears it, he checks whether it is ABC written on the holding device. And only then we would take this gamete or this specimen or whatever it is into action. So, yes, there is a potential risk of getting embryos getting mixed up, but if you follow protocols, if you incorporate electronic witnessing system into your everyday practice, the embryos will not get mixed up. This much I can definitely assure you, Mr. Javed. Let's try going on to the next question. Well, it is Miss Fatima who's asking, the concept of freezing life is so fascinating. Fatima, I never realized that I was going to be so blessed that I would be in a situation where I would be talking about this. It is absolutely fascinating, the way that you can actually help complete the family of a couple, the way that you can help society, the way I in fact actually tell my students that you're not actually making embryos, you're actually increasing the happiness quotient in the family. How do you study this? Well, it's a very, very long drawn process, Fatima. I mean, well, you have to be, of course, a science graduate. If you're a doctor, it is even more better, because then you understand the concepts of the smaller concepts slightly better in perspective. And to do this, once you're a graduate, there are a lot of institutes which actually offer courses on embryology and cryopreservation. It would be a pleasure to actually teach people who are really interested in this. I have been a teacher for the past decade and a half, and let me tell you, I think this aspect of medicine wherein you can freeze almost everything is crazy. In fact, if you go to cryopreservation actually happened even during the days of the pyramids and things like that. It might not be really cryopreservation, but it was preservation. How they used to pickle things, how jams were made, how we could eat fruits which are available in winters and summers, and vice versa. So this preservation and then cryopreservation. In fact, cryopreservation is abundantly present in the universe. There are bugs which actually cryopreserve itself in winter, so that when the sun comes up in summer, they would thaw themselves and continue with their own life. Frogs hibernate, we all know that. In fact, the nuclear wastes are also cryopreserved and kept under the bottom of the ocean. So the entire concept of cryopreservation is so much more fascinating. And yes, Fatima, knock our doors. We would be more than willing to teach you the nuances of this great science. Thank you. Let's see for the next question. We have Akila who's asking, are there freezing services in all the hospitals? Akila, no. I mean, not all hospitals per se would have freezing services available. But yes, most of the IVF centers or most of the fertility centers would definitely have cryopreservation facilities. So do choose, I mean, if at all you want to really go to preserve your eggs, you should knock the doors of a fertility center rather than any hospital. For sperm preservation, you have sperm banks also, but I would rather suggest that you go on to a fertility center, because then you're talking to a doctor. The person will actually counsel you as to what are the success rates and is it really necessary, the process, what is the cost, and I mean, you could actually reach a decision in a more educated way. So Akila, I mean, I think the answer to whether it's available in all the hospitals, I wouldn't say so. But yes, it would be available in most of the fertility centers that are there in and around the world. Mr. Shiv Kumar asks, are there any defects to the children born after freezing? No, Mr. Shiv Kumar. I mean, the short-term studies, I mean, we have been using cryopreservation of embryos for about the past 3 decades or so. In fact, you would be really, I mean, there's a fact which most of us don't know, that the first supposed IVF baby in India, Durga, was born after cryopreservation. She's hale and healthy even today. Of course, it has not been scientifically documented, but we all know that Dr. Subhash Mukherjee definitely used cryopreservation for that embryo. The embryo was thawed and it was transferred on a frozen embryo transfer cycle. So if she is good, I guess you can extrapolate it. Most of the offsprings are going to be good. The offsprings have now reached ever since the scientific methodology has come in, the offsprings are now reaching 30, 35, 40 years of age, or at least 30 years of age at least. And touch wood, none of them, or rather, I would say the majority or the bulk of them show no major defects that we really need to be scared of. I hope that answers you, Shiv Kumar. The next question is from Sayeda. Is there any harm done to embryos if they are stored for a very long time? So Sayeda, I mean, it's almost corresponding to the previous question, so it makes my life a little easier. Well, the answer is again no. And how long can you store it would be possibly the next thing. Or in fact, today with the protocols being so standardized, it is almost infinity. And why is it infinity? Because the protocols are absolutely crazy today. All you need to do is go to a good center which has a good standard operating protocol or SOP, wherein the liquid nitrogen, that's where we actually store the embryos in, are topped up, checked, monitored on a regular basis. And if the monitoring is good, if the storage is good, the embryos have an infinite life in the liquid nitrogen or in cryo storage. And the longer you store, there is going to be not much of problems caused because of the time duration of storage. Even though we generally tend to discard embryos which are a little older, because if it's 10 years, 12 years, we really don't know. But there was a time, in fact, it created a huge sort of a news splash when the mother, the embryo which was stored for about 30 years was thawed again and produced an offspring. This was recently there in the news about 6-8 months back. So the lady who was almost 30 years said, I almost have a sister who's 30 years younger than me. So I don't think if embryos are stored for a very long time, it's going to have a deleterious effect on the offspring. Let's go on to the next question. Kaveri is asking a very good question as to how to explain the entire process as to how the embryos are stored. Well, Kaveri, it took me around 12-13 years to reach this place as to learn the entire nuances. But yes, the simple thing is what our grandmothers used to do. When we used to make the mango pickle, we used to put it in salt, concentrated salt solution. What it does is it pulls out the water from the mango, or even in jams, if you see, we put in a concentrated sugar syrup or something of that sort. So the water comes out. When water goes out, it is replaced by a cryoprotectant. The cryoprotectant in these cases of food is generally salt and sugar, but in embryology it's slightly different. We have penetrating and non-penetrating cryoprotectants. You pull the water out of the system, push in the cryoprotectant or surround it by the cryoprotectant, and then you have to freeze it. So what happens is, since there is no water, there is no ice crystals which are formed, and these ice crystals are the ones which cause maximum damage. So Kaveri, I think you also should knock our doors for education in embryology, and I would be more than happy to actually explain the entire thing in detail. But the entire thing is, you pull out the water, replace it with cryoprotectants, and then dip it in liquid nitrogen, and your embryos are stored for a very, very long time. I hope that answers the question, Ms. Kaveri. We have Lavanya asking me, doctors, you mentioned that the embryos are stored in liquid nitrogen. How do you ensure that the embryos are safe? Oh, excellent, Lavanya. I mean, I'm happy that people are getting aware about all these things of safety, because safety is very close to my heart. Safety and ethics, the two main things which I live by. Uh, how do you ensure? Firstly, the level of liquid nitrogen should be good. The quality of liquid nitrogen should be good. Keep checking. Keep checking your liquid nitrogen tanks. We do it every 24 to 48 hours. There is a lower limit of beyond which, if the liquid nitrogen falls, the embryos are in danger. So you have a sensor kept at that level, and the minute the sensor goes off, you are supposed to top up the entire thing. Even if the sensor doesn't go off, you don't really wait for the emergency to happen. You keep on topping up the liquid nitrogen as and when it is. It depends on how many times you open your cryo tank. So if your openings are more, then the topping ups are more frequent. If the openings are less, then you can top up once in a week also, depending on what is the evaporation rate of liquid nitrogen from your liquid nitrogen container. So you just do this simple step, and we are assured of the one fact: embryos are going to be absolutely safe. Yes, do go to a hospital which has good and standard operating procedures, good SOPs, and your embryos will come out smiling. I hope I've answered your question, Lavanya. Mr. Shiva Krishna asks, when we use frozen embryos, is there a special protocol that needs to be followed? Shiva Krishna, the freezing protocols have come up from a concept called as segmentation of IVF. We divide the segments of IVF into the stimulation part, the embryology part, and then the freezing or the thawing part. So this is, in simple words, put across, we take off in a frozen protocol where we left off in IVF. So you generally let the endometrium or the uterus is exposed to certain chemicals called estrogens or drugs called estrogens. The lining grows, it becomes receptive in the sense it is ready to receive the embryo. Then we start a different drug called progesterone. And after 5 days, of course, this 5 days depends on when your embryo was frozen. If your embryo was frozen after 3 days, then after 3 days, you transfer the embryo back into the uterus and wait for a positive pregnancy test. Not much of protocol is there, but yes, we have to assess that the resting place for the embryo, that is the uterus, is absolutely spick and span. The lining is good, the blood supply is good, the shape is good, and there are no fibroids, there's no adhesions. All these things have to be ruled out. And then you place the embryo, God willing, the pregnancy is going to happen, the family is going to be completed. I hope that answers you, Mr. Krishna. Okay, Om Prakash has come up with another interesting question. I think I've already recruited a few of my students already. So he also is keen to become a cryobiologist or embryologist. Om Prakash, you just have to knock our doors, and we will offer you courses. Of course, as I said, it's always prudent that we choose science graduate because it is a very scientific process. It's a very protocol-based process. You have to follow everything as per SOP. It is almost like craft work. It is almost like firing a nuclear missile. Everything has to go step by step. And if you do everything step by step, rest assured, you will be successful in giving the mother or the couple a pregnancy. And Om Prakash, I'm pretty sure that you will also become a good embryologist if you follow this step by step process. Well, it's almost up to the half an hour. Let's see if there are any more questions left. Well, I can't see more of these. So, with a promise that we shall not go into cold storage ourselves, we will be coming back with more Facebook Live in the next coming weeks. And do let us know if you really want to hear about a topic of your choice, and we would definitely work on that to give you as much knowledge as possible. From Oasis Fertility, this is Dr. Sandeep Karunakaran signing off, wishing you all the very best during this the COVID pandemic times. Thank you, and thank you very, very much for a very patient hearing. Thanks a lot.